Welcome to the final Mental Health Boot Camp podcast.
Hey.
Woo!
Wow.
This is, and soon to be was, the podcast where four psychotherapists, three of us Canadian, one of us American, serve you cutting edge mental health knowledge. I am still Dr. Ryan Howes, a clinical psychologist from Pasadena, California.
And I'm Dr. Brooke Lewis from the Coast Salish lands.
Whoa.
And what are you?
A colonizer?
No, I mean like therapist. You missed that part.
I'm a registered clinical counselor from the Coast Salish lands.
Okay. This is a good start. I'm Joanna Boyd, clinical counselor from Port Moody.
I'm Chris Boyd, psychotherapist from Coquitlam.
Hello, everybody. Here we are. Once again, I just got to say, everyone is looking sharp tonight. Looking great. For those who are listening instead of viewing, you could watch us look at our snapshot on YouTube if you'd like. But Chris and I are dressed in top hats, both of us. We each have our own top hats. Nice.
Yeah, your top hat is just a tad too big.
Mine's a little.
It's like a top hat for a scarecrow.
Kind of sits on the top of my head. That's right.
Yeah.
And you have a great Miami Vice jacket there, I gotta say. Do you know Miami Vice? You might not know Miami Vice.
We
We know
do.
Miami Vice. Yeah. Have a random white tuxedo jacket, and I just realized all my collar shirts are basically at the laundromat. So I just have like a Hawaiian shirt I bought a little while ago. So, and how are you doing, Joe?
You're right there. Joanna's.
Sorry, I'm having a full-blown giggle attack, but it looks like I'm probably like really upset because I have a bit of an ugly cry, but I just got a giggle attack, so don't mind me.
I just thought you were emotional because this is our last episode.
What prompted the
What
giggle?
set that off?
The coat? I don't even know what the trigger
Oh,
was.
she can't. She's non-verbal. She's pre-verbal right now.
Yeah, no, it was silly. It was just me asking you what you are. Yeah, anyways. Woo! I clearly got some emotions going on here. Wow. Don't mind me.
Oh, it's not untrue. That's a whole different topic. We could
I
talk
know.
about that
It's a whole different topic.
today. Different topic, but
Uh,
technically, colonizer.
yeah, just having, I think I'm coming through my giggle fit here. Woo!
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, Joe, you look like you're ready to go to the Oscars or the Grammys or something. You have very sophisticated dress on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a nice occasion here to dress up. It's a very special night for us here.
Yes. And Brooke, we can't not comment on your outfit here.
So I decided to go for a white bob wig, not like the man Bob, like a fellow named Bob, but like this Joanna's.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
the funniest person to Joanna today.
You really do.
It's like contagious. So now I'm tearful. So like as in the hairstyle, I think I put my wig on correctly today, so that's good too. And I went with white because 100. We're older and wiser than when we started. So I thought
She looks like a disco ball.
the white one. And then I'm wearing a very gold sequined top. So I'm very like a disco ball, a gold disco ball with a white wig.
I could see you in like a 70s disco movie or something totally right now.
Yeah. Or
Yeah,
a 70s senior home.
There we go. Right.
Works too. We're turning 100 today. So
Yeah.
We are turning 100. Yes. 100 episodes of this podcast started all the way back in July of 2000. Wrapping up here, February 2023. It's been a long haul, but we're here to celebrate and to terminate in the right way by having a bittersweet ending here, right? Having a good closure.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
So it's been a long time, troops.
it is. It has. It has.
2.5 years.
That's right. That's right.
Mm.
So I thought we might go through just a few little questions, reminiscing a little bit, and just talking about our time here together, if that's cool with you guys.
I think so.
Sounds good.
So the first one, since we've had 100 episodes or 99 up until now, I'm curious, which episode sticks out to you the most? Not necessarily your favorite. I was just thinking about this in terms of like when I think about the podcast, is there one that kind of jumps out at me for whatever reason that just is, maybe will stick with me for a while?
Let's hear from you, Ryan. Anything that jumps out?
Good
Yeah.
job.
Sure. I actually am going to go all the way back to the very first one, which was really kind of exciting. Episode number 1, we talked about we talked about self-care. We were just getting the technology down. I'd been working on Zoom, teaching a class for a couple months right before that, and was just starting to understand Zoom. And we had been meeting regularly, and it was, summer 2020. So lockdown was still happening, and we kind of needed to find somewhere else to share our wisdom. So we decided to do this podcast. And that first one, we did great. We did fine. You guys were Brooke and Chris were outside, and a plane was flying by, and the sun was going down, and we ran through our little self-help tips, and that was nice. So I think that's one that will be forever memorable to me.
There was a lot of nerves before that first one.
Yeah, we were nervous.
I remember exactly how my place was set up and sitting there, and I was very nervous. I think we were very like, okay, you talk. Like it was a big deal. Very aware that we're being recorded, and you definitely get used to it after a while. But yeah, it was a very
very self-conscious at first there, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, that was a fun kickoff.
I think it was Ryan's idea to do this podcast because we were meeting Thursday nights anyway. I think you came up here one time. We're trying to revamp our mental health bootcamp program, and you started just recording one of our conversations. And then almost immediately it kind of changed the dynamic of it because you're just aware they'd be recorded, but
nobody talked.
But the premise was Ryan's like, hey, we're having some pretty good conversations here and some really relevant, conversations in terms of psychology, and we just record it, right? So then we came up with the concept as well. But yeah, I do remember that first episode for sure. That stands out to me.
Yeah.
I like the ones that stand out to me as well are when we had guest speakers.
Mm-hmm.
So and I's dad, he was on probably 5 times, I think.
He dressed as a wizard one time.
Yeah. So because we were trying to do one every single week, if one of us was missing, then we'd have someone come in and pinch hit. Or we actually had people part of the ambush as well, right?
Yeah.
So those ones are always great because that add a bit of a different dynamic to our conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I learned a lot through every one of those guest speakers. It was oftentimes something that I maybe knew a little bit about, but we get experts on and teach us things. It was really kind of fun listening to a lecture a little bit.
Yeah, we got to turn the tables a bit. We just got to ask questions and listen,
Mm-hmm.
which was nice. Except if it was a pinch hitter, then they just kind of participate as per usual. But yeah, so those ones are special ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Of the special guest, the one that came to mind, which was also the episode that came to mind when Ryan asked the question, was Joanna, your guest speaker. Was it Brian? Brian. Yeah, so that one actually stands out to me. And I think that's because it felt sometimes the other guests it felt maybe more formal or something. I felt like we were just having a very open, candid conversation with Brian. Yeah, for whatever reason, that one stands out to me.
Cool.
Nice.
Oh, and he had a lot of great stuff to talk about too. That was just a
Mhm.
great topic. He was talking about sexuality.
Yeah, gender and well-being. Yeah.
Yeah, just flowed. It was a good conversation.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think
Well, we can talk more about guests in a second. I want to give them all shouts out in a minute here, but what about you, Joe? What did you like?
There's so many episodes and there's so many that were hard to get through, and there's so many that were really enjoyable to get through. But I got to give a shout out to toxic masculinity, just because that was a struggle for all of us. I think it's not even on our list anymore for those who might try to go back and find it. It was one that it was a true ambush topic, and so that stands out. Maybe it was not for great reasons, but I think we referred to that one quite a bit jokingly. So anyways, that one.
With our negativity bias, Joe, we have 100 fantastic podcasts. There's one that didn't go so well. That's the one that stands out to you. I'm just scrolling through the episodes on Apple, and it's still on here, Ryan. I thought you deleted it a long time ago.
I did.
It's still here.
Okay. Well, don't listen to it, anybody. Well, it's not that the topic was. I think it's a good topic, and I think it's worth talking about. I think that was one where we were so truly ambushed, or I was so truly ambushed, because that's a topic where it's hard to define.
Yes.
It's hard to really get into all the permutations of it. I felt like that's something we could speak on if we had a couple hours to prepare. It's not something that often comes up as a common topic in therapy. I mean,
Exactly.
some
It's
elements
more
of
like
it
a
do,
sociology, right? It's more sociology than psychology.
in a lot of ways, yeah. So I think it's a good one, but it just caught me off guard, and
Yeah.
Caught everyone off guard.
It was funny because we were all kind of tongue tied.
You were the one that ambushed us, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was my bad. Technically, if you're going to ambush, you should probably have some context there or know what you're kind of talking about, right? To carry it. But I was hoping that you guys knew what it was all about. I think I was prepping for a presentation, picking your brains.
Well, I mean, it was a good ambush. That was a true shocking ambush, that's for sure. If anyone ever questioned whether or not our ambushes are staged or real, listen to that one. You'll know, oh yeah, we really don't know what the topic is until someone goes.
That's great.
We also did some book clubs. We started that after several of our podcasts. It wasn't right from the beginning, but we started to do a book club, and Joe gave us a theme song for it, and we covered a bunch of books throughout our time. And we gave each of those books a grade. Or a lot of them, we gave scores to as we went along. And again, I asked the same question, not necessarily the best or the worst, but which one of those kind of stick out for you the most, do you think? Or maybe it's because it's the best or the worst, but of the books that we covered and the discussions we had, what sticks out there?
I think there's one that I think a lot of us relate to, and that was Together by Vivek. I think that was a really enjoyable read, and such an important topic, and really eye-opening in terms of loneliness and how it's an epidemic on its own. So yeah, I really liked that one. That was a standout.
Yeah, same. I think I probably rated that one the highest, and that's the one I referenced the most since.
Yeah.
We're also like Brooke and I are Rotarians, and I know it comes up just the importance of connection, and it's not just within psychology, but just as a community. So it's come out a lot that way. So yeah, I enjoyed that. So it's such a nice read too. wasn't expecting it. Obviously, as the Surgeon General of the United States, I wasn't sure what to expect. So maybe I was just pleasantly surprised by it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's really good. I agree. Just to be different, I'm going to say I really enjoyed the sibling effect as well. That was something that was a little different for us. But we read that book, The Sibling Effect, which kind of talked about the impact of siblings upon one another and touched into the birth order idea and how just how siblings develop. And I maybe it was where I was at that time. Something about it really was interesting, intriguing. It felt very different from a lot of the other kind of self-help books that I tend to read.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Is that where your sister joined us, isn't she?
My sister,
Oh,
she
yeah.
joined us. She joined us via
Yeah.
text. Yeah,
Was that for that was for that podcast, wasn't it?
yeah,
Or I can't remember if we addressed
that's right.
sibling dynamics in another one, but
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I also liked What Happened to You.
oh yeah,
That one
Yeah.
by Bruce Perry there.
that's a very good one.
That was a very, yeah, I referenced that one a lot for clinical work. And then like personally, like it is work related, obviously it's psychology based, but What My Bones Know,
Mm.
I really enjoyed reading that book. And I thought that it was very valuable. So, and Braiding Sweetgrass, I really, really enjoyed Braiding Sweetgrass.
It's a lot of good books.
I know, I like books.
Yeah, that was fun.
For some reason, I'm not recalling the What My Bones Know. Was I there for that?
Trauma
It's a
memoir.
trauma one, yeah.
You may not have read it, or maybe you weren't there when we talked about it. Not sure.
You might have been on your hiatus.
Maybe. Anyways, we had many good books.
The Black Swan book was hard to get through.
Right.
Yes, the Black
one.
Swan book, and I remember I didn't take to The Gift all that well either.
Yes. Yeah, that was another one.
And though a very well done book, but Cast was hard to get through because of just the nature of what was being spoken about. Super important to read, but
Yeah.
That was very difficult.
That was.
Wow. A lot of books.
Yeah, a lot of books. Last week's The Gift of Therapy. Always love that book, beloved. It's a great book. Yeah. Well, let's get a little personal here. We've known each other for years. We talk about that several times on this podcast. We've known each other, worked on different projects with one another, and all of that. I'm curious if there's anything that we learned about one another while specifically working on this podcast, right? Like if there's any sort of, I don't know, personality traits or interesting little factoids. I mean, Joe had this great question and answer thing a few weeks ago where it's like questions for the group, and I think we learned some things about each other there. I'm just curious if there's anything that might be of interest to the listeners that we learned about each other during this time.
Good question.
Yeah, and it's hard because we do have a pre-existing relationship with one another. So it deepens the friendships and the relationships, but there's also obviously like off podcast interactions
Sure.
also deepen those relationships. So it's hard for me to think about what those moments would have been, so to say. I think we're all closer because of it, but it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly why or what transpired for that to happen.
Sure. That's a toughie.
Yeah, I think learned a lot about psychology. Obviously, that's been kind of the general topic of our podcast. But yeah, my top hat goes off to you, Ryan, for your ability to kind of host this podcast. I know we're all hosts, but you're kind of the quarterback. You keep it going. You kind of carry it in a lot of different ways. So I think you have a real knack for it. And I hope you continue on with podcasting in some capacity.
I'll talk about that in a little bit, but thank you, Chris.
Yeah, you're definitely a good ringleader there, Ryan. You're good with guiding us as we go. So that's been appreciated and admired. So well done.
Yeah, you fill the space and extremely knowledgeable. Obviously, you know you get to interview a lot of the people that we discuss on these podcasts, and it's a lot of personal stories. Good storyteller.
Thank you.
I've learned that Chris has the mind of like a sponge. Your ability to read something or learn things and be able to regurgitate stuff is unreal. I think I've had the few people, had a colleague who would listen to these and she'd be like, your brother, how does he remember everything? You're just like you're good recall. And
Yeah.
I think it's been super impressive.
For 6 or 7 things, I got it nailed down. Repeat it each day.
Nah, well, you're doing it. It's working.
Did I just minimize? Did I just discount?
You deflected. You did something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, I have admired that the whole time. So good job.
I'll say that I've noticed a few things, if that's okay. Did you do those? Just I think it's interesting, kind of, different roles and kind of things that we kind of have brought to this, right? I agree with Joe that Chris, so many times, I mean, almost every episode we'd bring up something, and this is all ambush, so no one's prepared for this stuff. We'd bring up some topic and Chris would bring it back to, well, according to this expert, blah 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 blah, right? It's like, whoa, where did you pull that out from? According to Dan Siegel, according to Gabor Mate, whoever it is, like, you have this kind of fund of knowledge where it's like you have this Rolodex in your brain where you can say, okay, here's some facts, which I think is very valuable to us, to not just be speaking from opinion, but here's some research, or here's some other expert that provides something for us. So I think that's been a very valuable part of this. Joe, I don't know, your vulnerability in this has been wonderful too. There've been times when you've laughed, you've cried, you've shared some things, you've shared some areas of your life where you're like, oh, this is not my strength. We talked like procrastination, different things where you're like, oh yeah, this is my struggle area. And just that authenticity and that willingness to be vulnerable and say, hey, here's who I am, I think is a good model for all of us, to be very real.
Thanks,
and yeah, absolutely. And Brooke, you brought the most, like, without fail, like the most interesting, weird topics to this group. Right? I mean, it just, even the way that your creativity to think up, like, okay, depression versus existential anxiety, or let's talk about just bringing a couple of weird things together, not weird things, but unorthodox things together, and like, wow, then we have a nice hour-long conversation about some interesting topic that it was truly an ambush as well. Maybe not as much an ambush as toxic masculinity, but very interesting, creative topics, Brooke.
Thanks, Ryan.
You're welcome. Anyway, I think it's all very valuable. Go ahead.
What about yourself? Did anybody learn any things about themselves?
That's good.
Thanks.
Just the realization, don't know there's so much we don't know.
Yeah.
Which is humbling in a lot of ways.
Or that the field of psychology is so freaking large, because I feel like each podcast, sure, there was, ended up following a bit of a template, sort of like defining our terms and getting into things, and we naturally got into a flow of things. But I'm sure each of us could listen to any episode and come up with 5 more topics,
yeah,
or ways to expand that. Like, even though we've done 100 episodes and it feels like we have no more topics, we actually just scratched the surface, right? So we know a lot. Our brains are wild.
Yeah.
I learned that I get tired on Thursday nights. Not gonna lie, some of these podcasts, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am tuckered out. My brain is fried. Okay, let's do a podcast. Great, let's do it. So
Yeah, I was thinking something along the same line. It's just the highlighting the importance of self-care and balance
yeah,
at times. Sometimes we do this podcast, it's like, okay, firing all cylinders. Other times it's like,
yeah.
couple little neurons up there doing a little dance.
Yeah. If you're talking about what's like self-knowledge, self-understanding, it's funny. My concept of myself is that I believe I tell myself I don't have a lot to say about a lot of things, but I found myself in this podcast, in this context, having to rein myself in a little bit. Like, oh man, I'm talking way too much. Like, I guess I got a lot more to say about some things than I thought I did. And just recognizing there's 4 of us here. I'm not going to monopolize this conversation. Was helpful for me. Like, I need to, I want to contribute and put my stuff out there, but I guess I can get on a roll and lecture a lot longer than I intended.
Yeah, it's the professor in you.
Yeah.
Over a bit. Yeah. No, that's great. But you also had to deal with filling the space. We just rely on you to fill the space, which is great too. Yeah.
I don't know. This was a good exercise in going outside one's comfort zone. I think especially at the beginning. So I think, 100 episodes in, I'm not worried about the recording, or, sometimes it'd be nerve-wracking to know what the topic's going to be and whether or not I'll be able to contribute and things like that. So, but I also think with that came just being okay with being like, hey, I don't have a lot and I can't get caught up in comparisons. I think everyone here has their own knowledge bases, and that's okay. So it's just enjoyable to be here, but know that to just take pressure off, I guess. So it was a good experience that way, just to kind of go with it and take it for what it is, and not get too stressed out, I suppose. So it was a journey. I guess that's all I gotta say. So
On brand, Joe, bringing that vulnerability. I love it. It's great. We had some great guest speakers.
we sure did.
I'd like to remember and honor them, and a lot of them were ambushes, and that's interesting, because the way we set up the format of this with our ambushes, we would ambush our guest speakers or into the podcast as well. And so oftentimes we'd have to ask them to like be on the phone while we're doing our little banter stuff. And we'd give them the link to the Zoom, and the other 3 of us wouldn't know who was coming on, if someone was coming on, or who they would be. And then boom, suddenly this person would appear and we'd all be surprised. Oh my gosh, who's here? So that it takes a lot of patience, I think, and generosity on the part of our speakers. So
Absolutely. And we don't meet at the most convenient time.
no.
Or if it's 9 o'clock, 9 p.m., 9:30 p.m., it's getting to be a bit late in the evening, end of the week. And yeah, what troopers, really. Do we have a list of the speakers?
I think we may be able to think of them off the top of our heads here, actually.
I listed a few of them.
Oh, good.
But not all of them, because I was just going through, and there's a lot, honestly. So
there are, right? Because the first one was Ryan, your pal, talking about
Martin. Nope, Joe.
Joe, the game, how the game plays you, the game plays your kid.
Joe Dilly.
Yeah, Joe Dilly. Joe Dilly, good friend of mine.
Yeah.
Who lived a couple miles away from me, has since moved to Austin, Texas, by the way. But
there's a place to be.
Yeah, that's the place to be. He talked about kind of screen addiction and like, kids and their approaches to screens, and I really appreciate it. He has a balanced approach. He's like, look, we shouldn't ban kids from screens or screens from kids. We should be mindful about it and aware and thoughtful about how these things happen.
Yeah,
He had some great things to say.
you really did. Yeah, he was a very good guest. Well, they were all very good, but
They were all very good. What else we got there?
We had Martin. Is it Sai?
Shaw. Martin
Shaw.
Shaw.
Oh man, yeah, bad pronunciation there with OCD.
Yeah. Martin was great talking about OCD, in particular, the idea of exposure and response prevention, which is a very OCD CBT sort of a treatment, and he's just an expert in the field and
so knowledgeable.
Delightful to talk with.
And then we had our wonderful dad, Dennis, and he came on for Grief Revisited. So we had talked about grief, just us, and then we revisited it with him. Episode 36. And then we jumped to David Linskog, and that was supporting someone feeling suicidal. And then there was a double whammy because the next episode there's another ambush, and that was ADHD with Adrienne.
That was great.
Yeah.
So
Adrienne Meyer, good friend of mine who knows a lot about ADHD and neurofeedback and a bunch of good areas like that. Sure.
I just remember, like, truly, it was just so fun when all of a sudden someone popped up and we're just like, whoa. It was just such a cool,
yeah.
It was always a very
genuine, right? It was genuinely like, hey, there's a speaker.
Yeah. I think there's the odd time people might get spidey senses, but then I think all of us multiple times were genuinely surprised. And so that was great. We had our probably most avid listener, one of our most avid listeners, Sean Marcellet.
Sean! Hi, Sean.
Sean came on. And then Dennis, our dad, came back for retirement, psychology of retirement. We had Casey Gerwin.
Yes. Casey, we talked about health anxiety. All right. I pre-recorded that one and then kind of played it for us. And yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because she's on the East Coast. I'm not going to ask her to stay up until midnight to do this.
No, that's fair. And then we had Brian Gadinsky, and that was the sexuality, gender, and well-being. We gave a shout out to him before. We had, I don't know if everyone remembers, we had Miss Lily, Chris and I.
Yes.
We had childhood in a pandemic, and Lily did great. We had Daniela Deutsch for chronic pain.
Yeah.
Which was super informative. I thought that was one of my favorites. I don't know. I think that may have been it.
I think the only other one that might not have been listed was another good buddy of mine, Steve Simpson, who talked about defense mechanisms.
That was really good too.
That was a great one.
Yeah.
That's good. I must have missed that one.
I don't know that I listed him in the title of it, but it was defense mechanisms. He's a professor who talks about that stuff all the time, and he was very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, as mentioned, our dad filled in for us as well. Like he was part of the ambush as well.
A handful of
times as well.
Yeah. He was a good sub.
Yeah. So
great. Yeah, those were fun.
We're very fortunate to have all those people join us.
Yes, very fortunate, and learned a ton. And Sean, since you're probably listening, I really appreciated your talk. That was great. Very open and vulnerable and disclosing, and great stuff there to learn as well.
Indeed. And Sean has a podcast through her nonprofit. Blind Beginnings has one. I forget what it's called, which is not very good. We all got to look it up right now. All Googling. Sean's probably yelling at us, telling us what it is virtually.
I think it's called Limitless.
I think so too. Yes, that's right.
Limitless Blind Beginnings podcast.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Wow. And they have 137 episodes. Go
Whoa. Even more than us. What do you know?
Amazing.
Should we keep on going?
Yeah.
51:37?
Try and catch up with them.
Is there, final question I wanted to ask was, is there anything else that, I mean, I know that when it's your turn to present, it's always like, oh gosh, what am I going to talk about tonight? I've had that. I had a,
Oh,
list of things that I would have to keep a little list of possible topics and all that stuff. I just am curious if there's anything else or any other even area, even if it's not a specific topic, something else that you felt like would have been nice to cover a bit more.
Can't think of anything that
Nothing.
each week it was really tough to be like, what? Like, yeah.
I'm curious, what were some of your methods on coming up with a topic?
Yeah.
How did, like, Ryan, you kept a bit of a list, but how did an idea come to you to put on the list? Or if you were scrambling last minute to try and think of something, how did the idea come?
Are you generally or to Ryan?
To everyone, just how did you come up with your topics?
At the beginning, it was easier because you're like, happiness.
Happiness, yeah.
Great.
What do I want to know more about? Or and then there'd be Googling, a lot of Googling of like hot topics in psychology, or might just be a client based, what has come up this week for clients. And I just try to think, or what's something that people wouldn't expect, or something outside the box, or just not psychology, but just getting to know people, or fun topics. But it was tough sometimes. Other times you're like, I got it. But
So Chris, Joanna, and I all work at the same office. So it would be common on a Thursday to run into one and just mention like, oh, are you up tonight? Do you have a topic yet? And just to see the look, like, not yet, or I'm working on it. Yeah,
I would Google it as well, or just reflect on sessions I had that week. There's something that came up, and then referencing the list of podcasts we've already done.
Yeah.
I think we could honestly, to Brooke's point earlier, we could delve into each topic that we did and have a different angle on it,
Yeah.
Sure. There's just that little bit of pressure, a little bit of, what am I going to talk about? And I felt that pressure too. I just managed it a different way. I have a little, it's like a sticky note sort of app for my computer. And I just had one that's just called podcasts. And I would, if I got done with a session or read something, I just open up that sticky note and jot down a topic, like anytime during the week. And there's still several that we didn't get to. So
really,
are you going to share what those are?
Like what?
I opened it right now.
Prove it.
Creativity. What is creativity? How can it support mental health? How can you make time for creativity?
That's a good one.
Boundary. Did we talk about boundaries?
Mm-hmm.
We did talk about it. Okay, that's why I scratched that one. Okay. Envy and jealousy. Did we talk about that? Social media. What are your thoughts on social media? Does it help or hurt?
Envy and jealousy.
Social media. That's a good one.
Acceptance. What does that really mean? Solitude versus loneliness. Success. What is success? Is it different for everyone? Those sorts of things. So a few other ideas, but it usually just starts with a word, success. Can I go from there?
Cool.
Yeah. Another one I thought was aging. I thought would be an interesting topic to get into. And your dad talked about marriage, which I think is great, but a lot of different things about gender and sex, relationships. I think there's a lot more to get into with regard to all of that as well. But that's for the next time we do the podcast, I guess.
Yeah. Does anyone have any regrets in terms of things they said or didn't say?
I don't know.
I couldn't really think of anything off the top of my head. I thought we played it very diplomatically. I felt it kind of mimicked the role we often take as counselors or therapists or psychologists. There's a lot of podcasts out there that try to go for the controversy, and they try to find topics, or they want more not, I guess, polarity or more discussion, or so I felt we were fairly aligned. But thank you.
There was a period of time towards the beginning of the podcast, we did this more, where we'd end the podcast. Good night, everybody. We'd stop, and then we'd talk for 4 or 5 minutes. And that conversation was even more interesting than what we were talking about in the podcast, right? And then we'd be like, man, we should have recorded this, because we might have said the things that maybe a little more edgy than what we've said in the podcast, or and oftentimes as after we logged off, I may have had a couple times where I was like, oh, I should have said this. I should have, which is natural. I get that. But we didn't do that so much towards the end, which makes me think that maybe we didn't feel as reserved, or didn't feel like we had to hold back so much after 50 podcasts or so, and we could just kind of say what was on our mind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't describe our podcast as edgy, though. I think because there's definitely more podcasts out there that are maybe a little more designed to be edgy and controversial.
Sure.
Well, I think most podcasts as well, you're going in with a script or an idea or a framework, or you're prepared. Yeah, I think our podcast is very different that way. This is completely unscripted, unedited.
Yep.
It is us having a conversation.
But also, like, we all have personal views on things, but I think we maintained some boundaries there as well, right?
Yeah.
I think we're all very authentic, especially Joanna with her authenticity there. With it, like in a counseling session, you wouldn't get into like a topic that you think is super controversial. It's more about holding that space and exploring it and whatnot, right?
Exactly.
So
I think that's really that comes from the fact that this sprung from the mental health boot camp, which was supposed to be sort of general mental health ideas for the public, right? We didn't start that boot camp to be like, we're going to make you wrestle with controversial topics. It's more like, here are some ideas that'll be helpful for you, for the general public, basically everyone, for your life.
Yeah, very digestible, accessible information.
Yeah. Anyone can listen to it regardless of your religious beliefs or political affiliations, whatever it might be.
There's also, I'm curious, if we were discussing some polarizing topics, if that was part of it, I don't know how that would be helpful for what we're doing anyway. We would just be having a controversial conversation for the heck of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, people might hear what it's like when Canadians and Americans argue with each other.
Yeah.
And when therapists argue with each other.
Yeah, there we go. Sure.
Speaking of which, my Aunt Roz has listened to a whole bunch of our podcasts, and she's worked for Tourism Whistler for many, many years, probably a couple decades. And what she loved about our podcasts was the Canadian American discussions. So the banter, the back and forth. She really appreciated that.
I love that. I mean, that's always of interest. That's one of the things that drew me to you guys in the first place. Oh, you're Canadian. That's interesting. Let's talk about the differences. Let's talk about how we're similar and we're different. And that's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of nice as, events over the past 2.5 years occurred, whether in the States or Canada, or happening to the world, pandemic, being able to just talk about, and reflect on those things together, and from our Canadian and American standpoints, or just individual standpoints.
Yeah. And a lot about weather and climate. I think that came up every third episode.
Did I mention we're having a cold snap?
Guys, it's I think it's very fitting that on this day that we're doing this final podcast, Los Angeles is having its first blizzard warning in like 50 years.
What?
What's going
Yeah.
on there?
That's crazy talk. No way.
It's actually the mountains above Los Angeles that are not too far from me. They're actually expecting 8 feet of snow in some areas of the mountains up there.
What?
Yeah.
What is going on down there?
I don't know.
Wild.
The
It's
volatility.
definitely wild. But, I figure momentous historical event meet another momentous historical event, the end of the Mental Health Bootcamp podcast, right? Of course.
Yeah.
That's 240 centimeters.
Oh,
Is that right?
a lot of centimeters.
I think so.
How many inches?
Oh my gosh.
8 times 12. 96 inches?
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
got to be below 0 degrees Celsius. My goodness.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's like
a
Chris.
lot of snow.
It's like Chris with 2 top hats on.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
Don't venture off too far up that hill, eh? My goodness.
I don't think I'll be sledding down my driveway anytime soon, but it'll be nice to see the mountains all nice and snowy. That'll be fun.
That's
Wow.
cool.
But yes, we talk weather sometimes, I guess. That's part of it. But we enjoy talking about the differences, which is fun. And thanks to Roz for listening to these discussions.
Yay, Roz.
Yay, Roz.
Hooray.
So what's next? What are you guys going to do with the energy that we've devoted to the podcast? What do you think you might do with this? Not necessarily this time, maybe, but the brain space, the emotional energy. What's next for you?
Unwind, I think. That would be good. Have some Thursdays just to have some downtime.
Connect socially.
Connect socially. Because we typically work later most days. Thursday's a good one to be a little more social because Friday tends to be an administrative day.
Yeah, so open that up. Or I might join Toastmasters.
Nice.
Toastmasters, yeah. And then not that we are in a place where we can actually discuss it yet because it's not off the ground, but we're going to collaborate on a new tech project, right?
So that is the 4 of us.
That's the 4 of us and maybe a couple others. So we're going to work on, we like our projects. Obviously this podcast stemmed from a project that is now offline, but
Things evolve.
we learned onwards.
That's true. I'd like to keep working with you guys together for a long time, if possible. I've enjoyed this collaboration.
Yeah, you're voted off the island.
Oh, this podcast really killed it for you guys, huh? Like that's it. We're done with Ryan.
That's what we realized about you is that we don't like you, and you're awful to work with. I'm joking.
The controversy.
It all comes out.
Yeah, the edginess.
Like there's been something I've been meaning to tell you. Now it's our final episode, so I feel safe to do it.
Yeah.
They say there's a little truth in the joke there, Brooke. So I don't know,
Yeah.
Let's not get into her dreams about this. My gosh. What about you, Ron? What are you going to do at this time?
Well, with the time itself, I'll probably spend the next few weeks crying. Wishing this time was still here with you guys, but I actually have an opportunity to do a little more podcasting.
Yeah. Let's
So,
hear about the project.
Or can you talk about it yet?
Yeah, I think I can talk about it. So I've become an advisor to another mental health website called Wondermind. And Wondermind is a site that was started by Selena Gomez and a couple of other business partners that she has, and she wants to kind of give back and sort of share mental health information and stuff with people. And So I've been a scientific advisor for Wondermind for the last 6 months or so. And we get together in monthly meetings and talk about different things they can write about on their website and that sort of thing, which has been fun. And they're starting up a podcast, and they'd like to have some input. So they said, hey, do any of you advisors, or half dozen or a dozen of us probably, and you guys have any interest in doing some podcasting for us? And I said, sure. My Canadian friends are, not doing the podcast with me anymore. So I'll have some space for that. So I'm probably going to be doing a bit of podcasting for Wondermind and my good friend Selena Gomez. Well, I've never met her. I'm just kidding. We'll probably never meet her, but we'll be able to do a little bit of some similar stuff over there. So that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, sort of offer self-care and just go through it
Yeah.
all.
And what it was is, you see, Selena was looking through at different podcasts, and she landed on the Mental Health Bootcamp podcast. She's like, these guys are great. I'm going to sing songs about them, and then I'm going to bring them on to my website. So that's what happened.
That's 100% how it happened.
This has been a 100 episode audition for Selena Gomez. That's what it is.
You did it. You did it. Woo!
I nailed it, everybody. I did it.
Way to go. How about you, Joe? What are you gonna do at this time?
Probably not much. Well, I'm guessing the four of us will still have the odd Thursday get together and social connection. We're still doing that other project, so we'll be chatting away, which will be nice. But yeah, no plans right now, and I'm not jumping at the bit to fill that just yet. So, which I'm okay with. So we're good.
We're good.
Yeah. But it will be strange. I think it'll be nice. There's some niceness in thinking of having that mental space and time. And then there's also the realization, like, it's been pretty cool to have this for 2.5 years. And I know I get to see Chris and Brooke more often, but this was always an extra bonus kind of special time. Whether going over to their house or just on here, like, I definitely valued it. So I know I can go over there whenever, but it was almost like this guaranteed little date. And seeing you, Rye Guy, from each week. So it's just been, definitely grateful for it. I don't want to take it for granted. I think there's some woohoo, but there's also like I think there's some definite sadness in there. It's a bit bittersweet for sure.
Yeah. I want to add on to that and say another one of the highlights of this podcast was I got to come up there last summer and hang out with you guys for a few days. We did a couple of podcasts from your living room.
Oh, that was great.
That was fun.
That should just can we re-answer question one of yours. That one definitely stood out.
Yes.
It's very different just being in the same space together.
Yeah.
Versus on a screen.
Totally. And I think I was wearing, during one of the podcasts, I was wearing that very top hat that you're wearing right now, Chris.
I believe so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Well, our friendship will go on. Our working relationships will go on, but every other, a lot of things must come to an end. So we'll have to bring this boot camp to an end. And bittersweetness, Joe, as you talked about it, I totally agree. There's a sense of, I thought that 100 episodes was kind of a good milestone to reach, and it feels kind of good. Someone says, hey, you ever done a podcast? You say, yeah, I did 100 episodes with this Mental Health Bootcamp podcast. So I think we're experienced at this point. But yeah, it's time to move on to other projects. So I also want to give thanks to anyone who's listened to us over this time.
Yes, the listeners.
Because I don't know, we may have done it if no one listened, but we actually had an incredible response of listeners. Not necessarily responses in writing us on our Facebook and Instagram and whatever defunct email addresses we have, but I could see every week where this was going. And I just tallied up the total before. We were in 93 countries, all 50 states. We were in I can't remember how many provinces there are, but we actually had a couple of listeners from Yukon as well as all the lower provinces. We were really fortunate to have people from all over the place who tuned in at least once and said, let's give these guys a chance. And I'm just very grateful for that. I hope that we gave you something to think about, or something that was helpful, something to entertain you for a little bit. It's just really fortunate to have someone take a little bit of their time out of their day to say, yeah, I'll give these guys a listen. It's pretty cool.
Totally.
Very grateful.
Yeah.
Cool.
We've had some great supporters from the get-go. So, and people who even tuned in once or twice, or who are there for the long haul. And yeah, it's all appreciated. Thanks for hanging with us. And also those people in Tajikistan who helped us be in the top
Top 3 or
top
top
three.
Sad here, actually. So there was a time we were position 2 in category mental health in Tajikistan, 4 in the category health and fitness in Tajikistan, position 19 in the category all podcasts in Tajikistan,
Whoa.
and position 222 in category mental health in France.
Great.
That's pretty
That's
solid.
awesome.
That's pretty amazing.
It is pretty
I don't
amazing.
know many other people that can say that.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they speak English in Tajikistan, but
Because I've got to say, I mean, when it comes to this podcast, we have spent literally tens of dollars putting this thing together.
you spent money on this?
Well, coming up here, I guess.
Well, coming up there and
I bought this microphone.
Yeah, we use that for other things, though.
it costs a little bit to host the thing on Podbean, but I mean, that's not that big a deal. But we spent a couple of dollars on this. No, we didn't invest a heck of a lot of money. We really didn't spend any money on marketing. But if you found us somehow and happened to listen to us, wow, what a great blessing to us. Wonderful. Yeah.
Cool.
So I guess that's about time to wrap up then, guys. Do we have any final messages for the listeners? Anything else? Any parting words about mental health, about life?
The only thing coming to mind right now is the body break theme. Like, stay fit and have fun.
Okay, there it is.
Okay.
Break.
That is a very Canadian thing, but we'll share it around the world. Stay fit and have fun, everybody. And I'm not going to even shout out any of the other things we are not going to be a part of any longer. Joe's going to cry and laugh her way out. But we'll say good night. Farewell and good night, everybody.
Well, bye now.
Thank you.
Toodles.
Toodles.
That's great.
Still recording.
That's okay. I'll cut it.